Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
I should have known better when I listened to Rodney and his pack of hyenas. I should have known better than to think they would accept me as one of their own. I should have known better than to accept a dare as a way of proving my worth, my courage. Nothing like that was worth risking my life over. But of course, I hadn't known that at the time. I hadn't known anything at the time while I was standing there at the entrance to the tunnel, peering into the wet, dripping darkness. I had no idea what would be waiting for me on the other side. "We'll be waiting here," Rodney said, his head cocked in that way of his lips thinly veiling a smile. "And remember, you have to go all the way to the end. No point turning back before, or we'll know." I didn't question how they'd know. At that point, I trusted everything he said. I guess I was desperate for acceptance, desperate for approval. I was the perfect target. I hadn't known about the others, the missing kids, the strange rumors back then. I hadn't known. "Go on, we'll be waiting right here." With Rodney and the others snickering behind me, I stepped into the old sewage tunnel. The water level was low, slick with dirt and debris, and sloshed around my feet as I walked. It was dark in there, but they'd let me bring a flashlight, so I fumbled to retrieve it from my pocket and switched it on. The tunnel curved ahead of me, disappearing into the darkness, and I threw a brief glance back. Rodney was still standing there, grinning as he motioned for me to keep going. With a nod, I turned back and kept walking. I hated Rodney. I know hate is a strong word, but I'm more than confident in using it. I didn't understand the definition of it until I met Rodney. He was single-handedly responsible for making my life a living misery. A bully was too kind of a descriptive word to use for Rodney. He was like the embodiment of wickedness. The worst part about him was that he wasn't even transparent about his actions and beliefs. If you're going to be a bully, at least be a bully out in the open and own your malice. He hid his true colors from those he knew he should, like a cunning bandit. The smell in the tunnel was hard, but not as bad as I was expecting. It was more of a stale mold smell than raw sewage, but I figured that could change the deeper in I went, keeping my mouth shut and sucking in shallow breaths. But my throat still felt craggy in the dry air. I almost wanted to turn and look back again to make sure they were still waiting, but I didn't want to seem weak or uncertain. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. I didn't want to seem weak in their eyes, but my current actions made me weak and pathetic. Rather than stand up to them, I was doing this partly so they would accept me. No, they would never accept me as one of their own. I was doing this so they would at least stop messing with me. God, I felt so pathetic. I forged on ahead, my shoes sludged through the water, the hem of my trousers soaking through. I was going to stink after this, but it was worth it if it would help get those animals to leave me alone. I just had to get to the end of the sewage tunnel and back again. It was a strange test of courage, but I wasn't going to question it, especially not to Rodney's face. As much as I wanted to stand up to him, I didn't have the courage. I tell myself it's because he's stronger, bigger, faster, but the truth is, I'm just afraid, but I didn't want to be afraid anymore. As I reached the first turn, I found myself shivering. It was colder in here than I was expecting, as though the metal tunnels were breathing out a chill. It was quiet too, nothing but the faint plip, plip, plip of water hitting the basin, echoing through the darkness towards me. My foot sank into something wet and malleable, and almost retched when I pulled away to find something black and stringy stuck to the bottom of them. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't really want to know either. I tried to balance on one foot as I wiped the other against the side, but I ended up having to reach out and hold onto the wall anyways, lest I fall into the water. My hand came into contact with something clammy and wet, but I fought the urge to pull away until I finished wiping the stringy black threads from my shoe. With a shiver of disgust, I lifted the flashlight and peered down into the tunnel. At the very end, I saw some metal grates, and my heart leapt. Was that the end that Rodney was talking about? Somehow, I'd expected it to be much further away. Glad it wouldn't be too much of an ordeal after all, I sloshed towards the flush gate on the other side of the tunnel, my flashlight bobbing ahead of me. As it drew closer, however, I realized I'd been wrong. There was another tunnel leading off to the right, just before the grate. When I reached it, I paused, breathing heavily through my mouth. Which way did I go? Rodney had warned me that they'd know if I didn't reach the end, but what counted as the end? I'd say it was the grate, but it was clear the tunnel extended further. The end could be miles away. I had no idea how long the system ran, but I figured at some point the water would be too high for me to get through, and nothing was making me swim through sewage water. I swallowed back the lump in my throat, the hairs on my neck beginning to stand on end. The flashlight in my hand flickered once, making the shadows around me suddenly jump out. Then, from the right of my tunnel, I heard a faint thud. It echoed through the gloom, sounding almost like someone had thrown a stone or something heavy rattling off the wall. I frowned. Was there someone else down here? Maybe a maintenance worker or something? I didn't know, but as I listened, there were no other noises. Perhaps something heavy had been swept along by the water. I angled a flashlight down. The water around my ankles was dark and muddy, and I was beginning to feel some resistance as I moved, as though it was deeper too. I didn't want to think what exactly was in there. With a heavy sigh, I decided to travel a little further down the second tunnel. I'd see how long it went on for, and if it seemed like I'd be stuck down here for hours, then I'd head back. I was sure Rodney wouldn't mind if I told him I thought the metal grate had been the end of the tunnel. God, how pathetic was I? I'm sure Rodney wouldn't mind. Anger began to stew inside of me. He lived in my mind. His face plagued my mind, my dreams. Striding through the water, I shifted the flashlight to my other hand, using the other to wipe away the sweat that had begun to accumulate on my palm. It was so cold down here, but my skin was starting to grow clammy with perspiration. Something dripped down onto my head, and I recoiled in disgust. Pointing the flashlight up, something black and viscous was stuck to the ceiling of the tunnel, almost like oil or tar. I grimaced, reaching up to wipe it out of my hair, and when my hand touched it, I realized it was sticky too, spreading between my fingers like melted cheese. I quickly wiped it on my trousers, checking the rest of the tunnel. There was more of it further along, and I wondered if it was some kind of fungus or mold that had started to grow down here. When I got home, I had no doubt I'd have a long, hot shower. In the darkness ahead of me, something splashed on the water. I quickly shone my light, seeing something red. It took me a long moment to realize I was looking at a shoe, a red sports trainer. Weird thing to find down here, but I suppose it wasn't impossible. Someone could have lost it down a drain. Was that what had splashed? But Where had it fallen from? I hitched the light up to the ceiling again and felt myself overcome with an intense feeling of horror. The same black viscous substance from before was webbed all across the ceiling. It was moving as though it was alive, but that wasn't the worst part. Stuck in the goopy web was the remains of someone's arm. I saw the white glint of bone, the stringy flesh, and quickly yanked my eyes away with a short cry. Dizziness made me stumble back, and I was flooded with the instinct to run. I turned, realizing now that I could hear something moving, the wet gargling sound of something slithering along the wall. That's when something grabbed my ankle. Long, clammy fingers stuck into my bare leg, tugging me down into the water. I flailed, stumbled, reaching for something to hold on to. The flashlight slipped from my fingers, splashing into the water. It flickered once, then went out, plunging the tunnel into complete darkness. I tried to shake free of whatever had hold of me, but the grip was too strong, intense, and I couldn't get free of it. In the dark, I became aware of someone also breathing along with me. Short, ragged gasps that filled the silence between my own. What the hell was down here? What had a hold of my leg? I tried kicking, thrashing, sending up sprays of black water until my foot eventually connected with something hard beneath the surface, and the fingers around my ankle finally let go. The sudden loss of stability sent me flying back, and I crashed into the water, coughing and sputtering when it splashed over my face. I spat, fighting back the urge to vomit, and tried to scramble to my feet, but everything my hand touched was wet and slippery, and I couldn't seem to get a hold on anything. That's when I remembered the thing in the water, the thing that had grabbed my leg. What was it, and where had it gone? I looked around frantically, unable to see in the dark. I could hear it breathing around me, but I couldn't see anything beyond my own hands as I reached for something to hold on to. Something splashed close to me, and I let out a quick shriek, thrashing my arms ahead of me to ward off whatever was there. I had to get out of here, but I barely remembered which way was back. Had I been turned around when I fell? It was too dark. I couldn't remember. Still sitting in the stinking water, I began to grope around for the flashlight. I doubted it would still work after falling in the water, but it was something to defend myself with at least. My fingers found something solid near my foot, and I was about to reach for it when something found me instead. Hands wrapped around my wrists, and a face loomed out of the dark. Horrible, grotesque, and inhuman. It was like nothing I'd seen before, and the scream that tore from my throat was like nothing I'd heard before. I kicked again with my leg, pushing the monster away from me, but I couldn't wrestle my arm free from its grip. That strange black slime dripped over its face, and when it opened its mouth, I glimpsed rows of sharp fangs, saliva dripping from a spiked tongue. What the hell was this thing? It was like no animal or creature I'd ever seen before. How had it gotten down here? And the biggest question I had, did Rodney know about it? Had he sent me down here on purpose? It sounded absurd, but when I thought back to that smirk on his face, maybe he had known something after all. The creature gargled, and that same viscous black liquid shot from its mouth, spraying towards my face. I managed to turn away just in time for it to hit my neck instead, and I gasped as it burned against my skin. Was it some kind of venom? If I didn't get out of here soon, then I would end up in the same predicament as whoever was certainly being digested up on the ceiling. Nothing but a hand and a trainer left behind. "Let me go!" I cried, wedging my foot into the creature's neck as hard as I could. I heard something crack, and excruciating pain shot down my ankle, but I had no time to check the damage. The creature finally let go, and I managed to use the momentum to climb to my feet, crying out as the pressure on my ankle sent forth a new spike of pain. Definitely sprained, if not broken. Limping through the darkness, I used the wall of the tunnel to guide myself forward, uncaring of the sticky residue, so long as I didn't trip again I should be able to make it out, so long as that creature doesn't. Something splashed through the water behind me, and then I heard a different sound. The click of nails on metal. Was it on the walls now? I forced myself not to think about it, staggering through the water, trying not to let myself succumb to the pain in my leg. Have to get out. Have to get away. Have to get out of here. My hand slipped from the wall, and I realized I'd reached the opening of the other tunnel. Now that my eyes had adjusted to the darkness, I saw the metal grate on my left. The tunnel was stretching away on my right. I was almost there. I had to keep going. The creature was still behind me, scrambling along the walls. The black liquid oozed along with it. But I didn't look back. Didn't let myself slow down for a second. Just as I was about to reach the exit to the tunnel, I felt a hand grab my ankle, causing me to fall to the ground. I screamed in fear as my eyes scanned the exterior of the tunnel in search of Rodney and his crew. I screamed for them to help me as I felt fingers wrap around my ankle. As my eyes adjusted to the outside, I noticed Rodney and the others were no longer there. I should have figured they wouldn't stick around after all. Had they even been expecting me to come out alive? Suddenly overcome with the realization that I was about to die, I stopped thrashing, my mind sending signals to my body, letting it know it was okay to stop fighting. It was okay to give up. What was the point? What was the point in anything? Why fight back against the inevitable? The pain that plagued my physical body was nothing compared to the pain I felt inside. As I lay there, face down on the ground, completely covered in black gunk, and God knows what else, I took a deep breath and expelled it through my nose. I was staring at the wall, thinking about how relaxed I was, knowing that it was all about to finally come to an end. The stress, pain, the anxiety, so much anxiety. I was done. Where was it? And why was I still alive? I turned my head to look behind me, but saw nothing. I searched for my feet and froze when my hand met pale, clammy fingers. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness once more, I leaned in closer, trying to examine what exactly it was that I was looking at. As I noticed that the hand was attached to an arm, which itself was inside a half-torn jacket, I suddenly knew what I was looking at. I suddenly remembered. I remembered everything. I kicked Brody's arm away as I got to my feet, brushing the dirt off my pants. I stood there for a second, trying to process my current situation, trying to process the fictional story my mind had conjured up to try and deal with the carnage I had created. My feeling of anxiety and anger and fear were replaced by emptiness, perhaps shock. I walked out of the tunnel, surveying my surroundings, my mind still racing, trying to comprehend current events. I should have known better than to listen to Rodney and his pack of hyenas. I hated Rodney. I know hate is a strong word, but I'm more uncomfortable using it. I didn't understand the definition of it until I met Rodney. With Rodney and the others snickering behind me, I stepped into the old sewage tunnel, peering into the wet, dripping darkness. I had no idea what would be waiting for me on the other side. Tonight's story was The Creature from the Sewage, written by Hair-Raising Narratives. If you enjoyed this story, chances are you'll enjoy the content over on his channel. His links to his channel, as well as all his other social medias, including his website, will be in the description below. Check him out and let him know PA sent you. Hey, did you have merch? Well, I do. And if you'd like to walk around representing my realm and gaining new travelers, the links to my merch store, as well as all my other social medias, will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to all my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Seraphine, the Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair-Raising Narratives, Nightmare's Mistress, Lichen Trucker, and Nathaniel Nelson. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers by light my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. Just remember, support is always appreciated, but it's never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ding that bell for all future content, as it will really help this channel grow and push this video out into the algorithm.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.